Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So a couple days ago, I asked you guys to send me some realistic hypothetical trades for this offseason, considering there's some names that we expect to be in heavy trade talks this summer. Guys like Jacob Chychrun, a UC Saros, Linus Ullmark, a Jacob Markstrom. So we're going to go through them now. I have 15 ready to go right now. We're going to go through each offer. I really appreciate you guys sending this in. And I'm going to give you my overall thoughts. Up first, an Ottawa Senators, Nashville Predators deal. Chychrun, Jared Bednar Docker, I believe, the 2025 first, a 2024 fifth for Saros with an extension in a third. When looking at it, I do understand where both sides are coming from on this deal. The Nashville Predators get a pretty young defenseman, Chychrun's like 25, 26, and a first round pick for Saros, as well as the Ottawa Senators getting their franchise goalie. I don't know if I love it for Nashville. Yes, they are a competitive team, but I think if they're going to trade Saros, they're kind of admitting that they're going through like a heavy retool rebuild. So I think they'd want like a younger core piece to kind of build around, then say a Chychrun. But I think this is definitely a solid deal for both teams. It's good value for Saros. Again, I'm just not sure if you're going to trade Saros. If Askarov's ready to go next season, maybe you do that. But I don't know if he's ready to be like a 50-game starter as soon as next year. But definitely an interesting trade. Next up, Markstrom to the Devils for Holtz, a conditional 2025 second that becomes a first if New Jersey wins around. I think this is solid. I would even make that condition like if they make the Eastern Conference Finals or Stanley Cup Finals, because with Markstrom, he obviously has 2 more years after this. It's $6 million. That is nothing to sneeze at for a guy that has been wildly consistent the last couple of years. So if I'm New Jersey, I'm not sure I'm willing to give up Holtz and then a potential first if they win a round. I expect the Devils to win a goddamn round next year with their young core after having a down year. So that's definitely an interesting deal. Maybe I definitely do that condition on like a Saros trade. I would just straight up trade Holtz in a first for Saros. With Markstrom, not sure I'm quite ready to give that much up, considering I think Holtz still has like late first round value for the most part, but makes sense for both parties. Obviously, the Calgary Flames would be very happy with getting a guy like Alexander Holtz and a potential first round pick for Markstrom, who's obviously getting up there in age and still has a pretty big cap hit. Jordan Binnington to Ottawa for a first plus a prospect. Obviously would not be their first this year. They're getting the worst of Detroit and Boston's pick this year. So that's probably going to be Detroit's, assuming that's going to be around like 14th to 20th overall. Would I trade that for Binnington? If you're going to get some money eaten on that, maybe when looking at Binnington, he also is making around $6 million for the next 2 to 3 years after this. They obviously, if they're going to go big game hunting with a goaltender, they're going to somehow have to get rid of Korpisalo. That's another whole nother disaster that they're going to have to deal with. But Binnington, similarly to a Markstrom, he is a little bit inconsistent. Markstrom's better than a Binnington, in my opinion, even though Binnington is playing great this year. So that's definitely something to look at. For the 15th overall pick, would I pull the trigger on that? I'm not so sure, but it does make sense for both sides. Zegras to Montreal for Justin Barron, Jordan Harris, Sean Farrell, Winnipeg's first 2024, Colorado's second 2024. You might have to add a slightly, instead of those 3 young guys that don't really carry a lot of value, any of them, I hate to say it, I hate to offend Montreal Canadiens fans. If you made that more of like a B plus prospect with those picks, I think it would be a yes. When looking at that Winnipeg pick, a month ago, it didn't have that much value when Winnipeg was like first in the Central Division. Now it's looking like it's probably going to be 22nd to 23rd overall. So that does have value. When looking at Zegras, will the Ducks end up trading him? I wouldn't trade him this summer just because his value's never going to be lower. I think this deal would be, based on how he's playing right now, that would be pretty fair value. A first and a second, even if it is a kind of late first, kind of a late second from Colorado with all those prospects. But if I'm the Ducks, I'm holding off on Zegras this summer. He's signed for the next 2 years after this at a reasonable 5.75. If he starts off hot next year and the team's still kind of in this mediocre phase that they are, below average ass phase, if we're going to be honest, then maybe you trade a Zegras and move on before you have to give him a serious contract extension. Not sure I'm trading him this summer, though. Next up, Chychrun yet again. I'm not going to try to pronounce that name. I'm going to botch it. In a second for Weegar. When looking at this, I think this makes a lot of sense from an Ottawa Senators standpoint. Obviously, Mackenzie Weegar's just a straight up better defenseman than Jacob Chychrun, especially on the defensive end, which is what they need. They need a more so defensive defenseman veteran right now. Does it make sense for Calgary, who just shipped out a Noah Hannafin, who's only like 26, 27, for a Chychrun that's only 26? I don't know. Maybe they would eventually flip Chychrun at the next deadline. So I like it for Ottawa, definitely. If you can upgrade over Chychrun for a guy like Weegar that's only getting $6.25 million, on long term. I think he has like 6 or 7 years left on his deal. But in the immediate future, that would be one of the better defenseman contracts in the entire NHL. But from a Calgary standpoint, not sure I absolutely love it, even though they could just end up trading Chychrun at the deadline. Marty Necas. Marty Necas for Evangelista and a second-round pick. Solid deal. Solid deal. I'm not sure if Nashville's ready to give up on Evangelista. He's only like 21, 22 years old and playing very good. But if they want to upgrade in the short term, and Necas is still only, like 24 years old. He's still a young player. So I'm looking at this, if you're Carolina, you don't want to pay Marty Necas, so you just ship him out for a younger guy that can fill a pretty solid role in your middle six. I think it definitely makes sense. Would Nashville do this? I'm not so sure, but if Carolina, I'm pretty easily doing that, considering that's solid value. Evangelista is a very, very good middle sixer at only 22 years old, while also getting a second-round pick from Nashville. Evander Kane to Chicago for a 4th and a 5th-round pick. I'm going to be honest, I think Edmonton, if they're going to dump Evander Kane this summer, considering he's making $5.125 million the next 2 seasons after this, I think they're going to have to attach a pick in order to get rid of Evander Kane. I think his contract is that bad, especially with term left. I think they're going to have to attach like a second-round pick to get rid of it. Yes, his counting stats are pretty good, but that's because he plays in an absolutely loaded top 6. So in looking at Evander Kane, yeah, I think he's kind of just a bad hockey player at this point. I think he's massively overrated just because what he did when he was very good when he got to Edmonton. He clicked with McDavid, but that connection has not been there over the last couple of years. And especially this year, he's actively hurt the team at times. So I think they're going to have to attach like a second-round pick just to get rid of a goddamn Evander Kane. That's just me. Maybe somebody would bite. When looking at Chicago, they're trying to bring in older veteran presences. Not sure Evander Kane's a high character guy that you want in your locker room. They already swung and missed on a Corey Perry. I'm not sure they're frothing out the mouth to bring in Evander Kane to mentor Connor Bedard. So I think they're going to try to trade him this summer, but I think they're going to have to attach an asset in order to get rid of Evander Kane. My New York Islanders. This comes to us from Braff53. I don't know, but some shit involving the 14th overall pick for a forward, and I couldn't agree more. I don't think we're selecting with that 14th overall pick. I hope we do. I hope we somehow go into a rebuild, retool, and just admit that this core isn't good enough. But after the Bo Horvat trade, as I always reference, that was kind of the point of no return. I think Lou Lamoriello is probably going to trade even more assets at this year's draft in the offseason in order to fix the massive holes that are on this team that could not be fixed in the short term by trading first-round picks. So I 1,000% agree. I think something like that's going to happen at the draft, and I'm going to lose my goddamn mind. Nazem Kadri for Linus Ullmark. Again, with these Flames trades, I like this for Boston, obviously, getting their second-line center. Yes, Kadri, his contract goes deep into his 30s, so there's some risk to that. But in the short term, $7 million for a guy that's going to put up around 65, 70 points makes a lot of sense for Boston. Doesn't make a lot of sense for Calgary. They're already trying to ship out Jacob Markstrom. Maybe you can pitch me on they do this trade after they trade away Markstrom, and then they try to flip Ullmark either also in the offseason or halfway at the deadline. But again, I like that for Boston. They should be looking to trade Linus Ullmark for that legit, maybe first-line center. Kadri would be their first-line center, for being honest, even though I don't think that he's a true first-line center. But getting a legit top 6 center, or even just a top 6 winger for the most part, I agree with the premise of that. I think the team fit just is a little bit off. Barrett Hayden for Adam Boqvist, a little bust off here. These guys have really not lived up to expectations. I think maybe this deal could make some sense in terms of them getting a change of scenery and making work. Hayden looked very good last year when he was centering Nick Schmaltz and Clayton Keller towards the end of the year. That line just hasn't really been the same this year. I think they broke it up for the most part. So maybe move on from both. Philip Deneau or PLD for a first and a second for either Saros or Ullmark. I think when looking at this, I think if it's Boston, they would definitely want Philip Deneau. I think even Nashville too. Philip Deneau is only making like $5.5 million for the next couple of years, being one of the best, very, very good second line center, defensive center, can get you 50, 55 points. I think that could make sense. That's what I'm talking about with Boston with Ullmark. Would they have to give up that much if it was Deneau for a first and a second? I don't know. I guess maybe if you're doing PLD, yeah, they're actively trying to dump that deal. But it does make some sense for both teams. If you're Nashville, you get a bunch of picks, you get a first and a second, and maybe PLD can turn it around. Maybe you can flip them down the road. And if you're Boston, yeah, maybe you can lock PLD. But I think Philip Deneau makes far more sense in order for this trade. And yeah, it's okay. It would definitely need some work in terms of the overall assets. But I get where he's coming from. Frank Vetrano for Marty Necas. This is a very interesting one because, again, if Carolina doesn't want to pay a Marty Necas, maybe Anaheim really likes Marty Necas. Again, only 24 years old, fits more so with that Anaheim core. So maybe they trade him away and then get Vatrano for next season also at $3.65 million. So a very, very team-friendly deal. Would they be able to re-sign Vatrano past that? I don't know, but they are in heavy cup contention, so maybe you don't really worry about potentially having Vatrano walk for free. I think this does make some sense. I'm not sure. It's solid. It's solid. This is overall a solid deal. Mario Ferraro for Nick Robertson. I think Toronto would probably have to package like third round pick, maybe even a second round pick on top of that, just because Ferraro is an established guy. I think Ferraro would be a good fit in Toronto, just being that physical defenseman in their top four. His underlying numbers are dog shit just because he plays on the San Jose Sharks, but he's overall a high character guy, can play some serious minutes. So I like that for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But again, Nick Robertson isn't some established young NHLer. He's going to be 23 in a couple months, I think. So I think they'd have to give some picks on top of that to get San Jose to trade him. And then lastly, Thomas Shabbat for Erik Karlsson. Definitely an interesting one. I see this from Ottawa's angle that Shabbat just can't stay healthy for the most part, does have some weaknesses in terms of defensively. Try to bring back Erik Karlsson, plays the right side compared to right now. They have so many goddamn left-handed defensemen. I see the logic in this, and if you're Pittsburgh, maybe you think Shabbat, obviously much, much younger, lower cap hit, so you can kind of build. He'll be playing at a high level for multiple years. Maybe Pittsburgh would have to eat some of Erik Karlsson's money, but that's definitely a very interesting trade. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about these hypotheticals? Which ones do you think were the best ones? And give me your hypotheticals down in the comments. I'll let you know what I think of it, and I'll be seeing the next one.